Okay, hello everyone. So our meetup today is dedicated for SQL injections. Before we start, a few words about me. I'm into software development ever since I was a child, and I'm into software development in a professional way, including training and consulting for more than 25 years. So started with Java and then continued with other programming languages, frameworks, and platforms. I deliver courses in academic institutions as well as in private companies, mainly training tailored for specific needs of a specific company. If you check the website lifemichael.com, you can find more information about the courses, including courses available on Udemy and courses in Hebrew on a new platform known as Life Michael Academy. If you check the seminars, you'll find information about various seminars in different topics. And soon I plan to add new seminars in the cyber domain, including a seminar about SQL injections. And if you check out the conferences tab, you can find more information about the conferences my small company runs, including Extreme.js, Extreme Python, and Extreme J. If you happen to talk in conferences, you are interested in taking part, then you will find all information about the call for papers in each one of the websites for these three conferences. If you check the meetup group, Life Michael Academy, you will find those three conferences as events. You can just join the event that you find interesting and you will get a free pass to the conference itself. You won't need to pay. So I recommend you check the Life Michael meetup group. You will find as future events, these three conferences. Just join the event, don't pay, don't do anything. I will get in touch with all the members that join the events before the conference takes place and hand over the free pass. Now, back to the topic we have today, SQL injections. Well, what is SQL injection? So we have two words, SQL, and I assume that all of you are familiar with SQL. And SQL is kind of a standard query language we use for performing queries when working with relational databases. Relational database, I'm not talking about NoSQL databases, we're dealing with relational databases, databases that store the data in tables connected with each other using primary keys that we use as foreign keys in other tables. Injection, the word is to inject, to take SQL code snippet and make it running in a place where probably the developer didn't think about in advance. And by doing so, we can manipulate the web application or the application and have it doing stuff the developers haven't even imagined, probably haven't even imagined that it is possible to do. Bottom line, to hack a website, you can use SQL injection for getting into a website where you need a username and password without having the password. You can use SQL injection for getting data you're not supposed to get. You can use SQL injection for deleting data. You can use SQL injections for various tasks. And the surprising fact is that even today, we still have many web applications, vulnerable web applications that we can still use SQL injections in order to hack into those web applications, getting data we're not supposed to get, deleting data, and so on. Just a brief history overview. long time ago, and I'm talking about 30, 40 years ago, working with a database was the job of the DBA or someone who is responsible for working with the database. He was the one that generated reports. It wasn't even possible for a simple user open a web browser because we didn't have such thing and indirectly work with the database as it happens today. And that's why those possibilities to inject SQL code and by doing so, doing harmful things still exist. Okay, so if we try to define the term, then SQL injection takes place when the attacker succeeds injecting malicious SQL code into the executed SQL statement on the attacked server side. Just imagine a web application. It has a server, there is the client, and on the server side, there is code running, including execution of SQL commands. And just imagine that we find a way to have a small snippet of SQL injected to be executed in a place where the developer hasn't even thought about that option. And by doing so, we do terrible things like getting into a web application we're not allowed without having the password, deleting data, getting data we're not supposed to get, and so on. Before we move forward, I just want to share with you a small video I prepared, 4 minutes. It shows how using SQL injection, I hack into a web application without having the password. This is it's a small introduction to what we are going to have right after. And also, if you are not familiar with the way web applications work, then just a small introduction. When browsing the web, you actually have code running on the server side. You have code running on the client. Usually the client is a web browser, and the code running on the client side, inside the browser, initiates HTTP request to the server side. And when an HTTP request is sent to the server side, we also have parameters sent together with that request so that the server side get data using those parameters, and it does something with that data. And usually, in many cases, that data is added into code that includes SQL statements in order to execute something with the database, in order to perform something with the database using the data that came as parameters with the request. So let's just a moment. Okay, so here it is. In this sample, we use the store_db database with a specific table. Its name is users, and this specific table should hold all username and password that can access the system. Currently, the table has one row only with the username David and the password Michael. This sample also includes two files. The first is a login form.html where the user needs to enter the username and the password, and then those two values are sent to the login page.php file. The login page.php file simply verify that the entered username and password are correct. It does it using a simple SQL query. Let's see how it works. This is the form.
let's try to enter bad username and password and get the failure message. And if we want to get a successful message, we should enter David and Michael. Let's see how it works. Here it is, we get a successful message. Now let's see the way an hacker can access this specific system by doing what we call an SQL injection. All the hacker needs to do is enter as the password this specific value. It can enter as a username anything he wants. Let's see how it works. You can enter anything as the username, and as the password we can enter this specific value, and when we execute it we shall get a successful message. So in a way an hacker can access our system without knowing the username and the password. What exactly happened? If we take a look at the code, and this is the code, and try to analyze it, we shall see that if this is the specific entered password, it doesn't matter which username was entered, the logic expression that as long as it is true, we get the row, and actually we get all rows in this case when we enter this as a password. The logical expression, if we take a look at it, we can see that we have a logic expression that includes two parts. This part and then this part. In order to understand what happens, you first need to understand that the AND operator is executed before the OR. So this is one expression, we need to know its value, and this is another. Well, about this one we of course get false, but this one is always true. So the whole logic expression is true, which means that this specific query actually returns all rows the table includes. So when we take a look at the code, we actually do succeed to receive a result set when we execute this SQL statement. So this condition is true and we get a logging success message.
We're talking about different types of SQL injections. After the small demo where you could see me hacking into a website without having the password, now I want to show you other types of SQL injection. And one type is retrieving hidden data, meaning getting data we're not supposed to get. Take a look at this code sample over here. We have a website with the table. Its name is product, and there is a query taking place using a value, using the category that is passed over. It can be passed over from a form or a query string, and if the value of category is food, then we should get all product in category food that the value in released. Release is a column that has the value 0 or 1. It all depends whether the product was already released or not. When having this statement executed, we should get the details of all products that were already released in category food. Now, if we somehow find a way to send, together with the request that is sent to the server side, a category that looks like this one, then the SQL statement that will take place will be this one, meaning that all of this will be ignored. This part will be ignored because dash is a way for creating a comment, and we shall get the details of all products in category food. Another way for getting hidden data in this case can be by finding a way to pass over as the value of the parameter category this specific text. when doing so, the query that will take place, just imagine taking all of this and put it inside single quotes, as in this case. So what happens is that the SQL statement that will be executed will be this one, because as you know, dash dash is a way for creating a comment. So this part of the SQL statement is ignored. It becomes a comment. Now, if this is the SQL statement being executed, then thanks to this OR Boolean operator, and thanks for the fact that this expression is always true, we should get the details of all products, not just those that their category is food. Okay. Okay, let's move forward. Another type of SQL injection is when we modify the application logic, as we saw in the small demo I showed you. When you access a website without having the password, for example, this is a demo demonstration. This is one sample for changing the application logic. Just imagine that we have on the server side a statement like this one, and we find a way to pass over to the server side as the value of username this text. When doing so, what happens is that we get a statement that this part of it is actually a comment. So the actual statement is select from users where username equal admin. So we actually get a reply from this statement. And if this is the way the application logic verifies username and password, then we find ourselves getting into the website even though we don't have the password. Okay. Another type of SQL injection is that type of injections we use for getting data from other tables. So we know that when the request is sent to the server side, there is an SQL statement that fetch data from a specific table. And we know, for instance, that the statement used the category that is passed over to the server side as a value of a specific parameter that is sent together with the HTTP request. It can be sent from a form or a query string. And we simply change the value of the category we pass over. Instead of food, we pass over something like this. And then what happens? We get another SQL statement executed. And then because of using the union, so from this query, we get nothing, but because of the union, we get, in this case, all username and password from the table users. So we actually get data from other tables. Another type of SQL injection is those injections we use for getting information about the database. Sometimes we know in advance that the database is a specific database because we know we're dealing with a specific open source project, but sometimes we don't. We just need to inject a query for getting the version of the database. And when we know the version of the database we're dealing with, we might take advantage of various vulnerabilities specific for that version of that database. Another thing to be aware of is web applications that return a message that include error message, detailed error logs. In some cases, these detailed error logs include information about the database and about the tables. And if as for the hacker, it just needs to cause some error to take place and then go over the error message, and from that error message learn about the database, the tables, get more information that it can use for hacking later. for us, as the developers, we must ensure that our web application never send a response to the client that includes details about the error that took place. Never. Especially not details about the database and the tables, but not even other information, because you can never know the exact use the hacker can do for using that information. So never, an application should never return detailed error message. There is also a type known as blind SQL injection, when we inject as a code snippet of SQL for doing something, but we get nothing from the response. It is just for having specific data added to a specific table, for instance, something that we can later use in another operation we do. So it can be kind of 2 steps or 3 steps of hacking the website. The first step is a blind SQL injection just for adding specific data to specific table. For instance, we find a way to add a specific new row to the users tables with a specific username and password, and then the next step will be using it. So when having SQL injection that the response doesn't include anything harmful, we call it a blind SQL injection. Okay, so how can we detect SQL injection vulnerabilities in our web application? I'm talking to you as a developer. I want to do my best to ensure that it won't be possible. Well, you can't say impossible. I want to make sure I did everything I can in order to prevent the hacker from hacking my website. Well, a part of what I added to the slides, and we're going to go over it. If you are using an open source project, if you just a small break, when we are very tight in time, when I complete the session, we have a few minutes, I will go over all questions and answer them. I will answer everything. If you're using an open source project, just as WordPress, Moodle, Joomla, make sure you are updating the open source project. Make sure you're using the latest version. This way you not only enjoy the best of the best you can, but you also enjoy the bugs and the fixings for various security breaches the project has. I mean, WordPress, over time, people find various vulnerabilities, including possibilities to do SQL injection, and at the same time, others work on fixing those bugs, those security breaches. So make sure you are using the latest version. Now let's get back to the slides. You can find various tools that you can use to detect SQL injection vulnerabilities. You can use SQL Map and JSQL for free. You can find here are the links. You can download those tools for free, and you can find lots of tutorials on YouTube showing how to use them. And using these tools, you can easily find most of the vulnerabilities, not all of them. There are also some commercial tools, and I listed those commercial tools as well. Another way for detecting vulnerabilities will be doing it in a manual way, meaning just focus on specific endpoint, specific form, and manually, for instance, try to enter data, including Boolean conditions, for instance. If you see differences in the responses, it means that there might be a problem. You can also try submitting a single quote and looking for errors or other anomalies. It is also a way for detecting security breaches. And there are other ways for doing it manually, but I didn't cover them here. If you want to practice those tools, there are vulnerable web applications you can download and install on your computer and then just play with those tools I mentioned, such as SQL Map and JSQL. There are lots of vulnerable web applications you can download for free and just install them on your computer and practice. You don't want to practice SQL injections on a website, a commercial website. You don't want problems with the police, of course. About the parts where the SQL injection can take place, well, usually it is in the where clause, but you can also find SQL injections that take place when doing update or insert statements. It doesn't have to be an SQL injection that takes place in the where clause of the select statement. About the context, well, the context, usually the SQL injection takes place using a web form or the query string where you can specify the exact SQL code we want to inject. However, there are cases where we can indirectly do what we call a SQL injection by uploading a file that includes code snippets in SQL, knowing in advance that the website has code that is going over the file and do something with the content. We might be able to inject specific code in SQL to be executed on the server side. Another way for committing SQL injection when we have a web service and there is a web application that works with that web service and the reply from that web service includes a small code snippet in SQL. This is also a way for injecting SQL and have it executed on the server side of the web application we want to act, if we want to act. This is the case. So these are the main contexts where SQL injection can take place. Remember, it's not only using query string or web form, there are other cases. And when using uploaded file or a reply coming from a web service, we can even be a bit more sophisticated. And for example, instead of writing the letter S, writing the entity, ampersand at the beginning, this is a replacement for the letter S. And by doing so, maybe by doing so, the web application we want to attack, if this is the case, well, let's change the rules. If the hacker is doing something like this, and the web application that the hacker tries to act as some kind of cyber application that protects from SQL injection, maybe that software that protects from SQL injection doesn't check for having this character combination and maybe just looks for the letter S, and by doing so, the hacker actually overcomes the application that protects the web application the hacker tries to act. So there are various manipulations we can do when using other contexts, such as a file we upload or the hacker uploads to the web application. A second order SQL injection is when we have SQL injection that the response doesn't include anything harmful, kind of a blind SQL injection. And then afterwards, there is another SQL injection that takes advantage of the data modification that took place following the first blind SQL injection. And this is a sophisticated technique that if the hacker already knows the way the web application works, he might take advantage of this technique. So he has the first SQL injection just for having specific data and inserted into specific table. And then the second SQL injection simply used the data that was added in the first attack. Pay attention to the fact that SQL is not the same on all databases. In some cases, we have possibilities with specific databases that we don't have with others. which means that there might be vulnerabilities that are specific for specific databases. And also, there are cases in which the code snippet in SQL we want to inject might be different for different databases. Okay, so how can we prevent SQL injection? Well, one thing we can all do is make sure that we use prepare statement. We have prepare statement in Java, Python, PHP, lots of programming languages support the use of prepare statement. Using prepare statement, if you are familiar with with prepare statement, then it is nearly impossible to inject SQL. It becomes impossible. Another thing would be using whitelist. Whitelist meaning that if there is a specific field in the form where the user needs to select the country, then it shall see only a final list of countries he can select from. It won't be possible for him to select a country that is not on that list. So this is the way for doing things. This way, the server side will expect having a specific country out of that list. If not, if you didn't receive a specific country of that list, it won't process the request. Another thing to pay attention to, the variables used in your code. Make sure you have the SQL code hard-coded. If you use variables, it might be a security breach. It might be an opportunity for the hacker somehow to find a way and reach that variable. It's not safe as using SQL code hard-coded into our program.